Do you remember when all of the websites out there, all of the Disney bloggers were telling you that Disney was beating DeSantis? Walt Disney World was a huge mistake to be the target of the ire of the conservatives of the Sunshine State. And then all of a sudden, as if something has changed, you heard nothing more about it. Oh my gosh, folks, I think they were trying to memory hole it. And we're going to tell you why right now. All right, folks, welcome back to another video of excellence here on the WDW Pro channel. A joy to have you join us. And we have Andrew of the Legal Mindset here ready to assist us in explaining what is going on with the Walt Disney World Resort, the Ron DeSantis governorship, and the legislature of Florida, and why exactly the media has been so quiet lately. They don't seem to want to talk about this issue anymore. So, Andrew, welcome back to the channel. It's been far too long, sir.
Yes, I'm glad to be back, and thank you so much. Yeah, I'm definitely continuing to cover this on my channel and staying on top of this issue as the mainstream media, particularly Disney controlled media, tries to hide this information, suppress it, as the bloggers try to ignore it. They try to stick to kind of pithy little lines and little, Mickey beat DeSantis sort of zingers without looking at the actual facts. And I think that's more because they're about to take a giant L in the courts, and they're trying to suppress that as much as possible.
Now, Andrew, as we get into this topic, it's my understanding that since the last time you were on this channel, your channel has reached a major milestone. So pardon me if I celebrate with you for just a moment, but you have reached 100,000 subscribers, a huge, huge accomplishment for your channel. I'm so pleased to see that. And folks, if you are not yet a subscriber over there, well, hurry before you miss out. So many people have already subscribed, and that's the kind of content you all want to see. All right, Andrew, we are going to...
I was going to say, there's still time to get on before 200 and 300,000, guys. You still got time.
There you go. Well, Andrew, we're going to hop into this article out of USA Today. Folks, as we do, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. And when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Here we go. This is by Kayla Jimenez. Again, on USA Today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis feud with Disney World explained. We're going to find out how well this does in explaining it. We have an expert. Andrew, before we get into this, explain to the audience. We have so many new viewers. Why are you the exact right person to explain what's going on with Disney World?
Well, absolutely. Number one, because I am a Florida attorney. I'm barred in the state of Florida. But because of this, I actually practiced in Central Florida. I know all the players, and I specialized in special district law, which specifically dealt with these special districts like Celebration, Bonnet Creek, Reunion, all those districts are around Reedy Creek. I also worked across the table from Reedy Creek when I was there. So I know all about special district law, local government law, and what's going on the administrative side in Florida. And particularly, I know how they did things wrong. Reedy Creek did things wrong, and how that really hurts them in their state court battle and in their federal lawsuit. So there's going to be damage in both of those cases. And I am the guy who kind of knows the most about it out there, not just on the internet, but really in the entire state of Florida.
Absolutely. And you have been right with a track record of near perfection, or perhaps, shall we say it, perfection, in terms of following this and telling us exactly what was going to go down. Let's dive in and see how you do with this article. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis wants out of his legal battle with Disney, according to court records filed by his attorneys this week. The mass media company in April sued the Republican presidential candidate for taking away its ability to self-govern the 25,000-acre site of its Walt Disney World amusement parks in Orlando. Andrew, how many companies out there have the right to self-govern and focus on that word govern?
Yeah, that's a zero, because the company isn't supposed to be the one really governing it directly. They're supposed to, have kind of a smorgasbord of electors based on the landowners, which, eventually were supposed to be actual registered voters at one point, if this experimental prototype community of tomorrow actually was built out. None of them had a setup like Disney. None of them had control like Disney. Absolutely zero. Now, there are other districts like Bonnet Creek which is right next to Disney, that are controlled by commercial entities, landowners. But there's a cornucopia of landowners. There's 5 or 6 different landowners, the Waldorf, the Wyndham, the JW, that all come together to work together, collaborate for a common good on the things that are public. Disney completely controlled Reedy Creek. They had 100% control, and not just in the normal sense, but they had the power to do things that nobody else could do. Airports, nuclear plants, setting their own taxes, and eminent domain outside of their boundaries. These are things that nobody else could do, and certainly they could not do those things with zero oversight in the state of Florida. So Disney really had unparalleled power, which is why for the longest time Reedy Creek was suspect to continue to exist in the state of Florida.
We've said it before on this channel, we'll say it again. It was a little bit like having the Vatican City of Central Florida down there. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say. That's a very fair comparison.
All right, let's continue on here. We've got Disney claimed DeSantis targeted and retaliated against the company with the move because it disagreed with his, and folks, we're not going to say the name of that as it's given, because that is a propaganda term. That is not the actual name of the legislation, right. And we don't believe that news articles and outlets should be using the partisan titles for pieces of information. Rather, they should stick to the unbiased labels. The bill last year, which bans... Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say, in fact, that's a very good tell for the slant of the article. The fact that they present it without even presenting the actual name of the bill, they just present it with its propaganda name. That's a very much a tell for this article already.
Well, imagine if some people did not like the state of Florida, and so they started calling it the crap hole state, right? And then every news outlet out there began just calling it the crap hole state, and you had to look up to see, what is this? Where is this place? Oh, they're talking about Florida. Well, that's the same way with this. There is no don't say blank bill. That doesn't exist. That's a propaganda term that has been invented to malign it. Now, you out there in the audience, you are welcome to agree, disagree with the bill, and land in any location within the spectrum of agreement or disagreement. We're not here to tell you what to think or believe. We're not here to give you your moral code. What we are here to do is just say, we like to have unbiased language as best as possible. Now, it says here that it bans education about bedroom issues and this new identity thing that's taking over society in some Florida classrooms. What it fails to say is that it's talking specifically about preschool to about 3rd grade. So we're talking about 4-year-olds up to 9 or 10-year-olds. You're not allowed to talk about anything to do with that at all. Hetero, homo, nothing. DeSantis attorneys asked a federal judge Monday for immunity from the case, which would drop the suit and free him from any further legal action, liability, or punishment. In a legal filing, his attorneys said the court should dismiss the case in part because all of Disney's claims fail as a matter of law. A spokesperson for Disney did not immediately respond to a request for comment Tuesday. Shocker. But attorneys for the company wrote in their lawsuit, Disney finds itself in this regrettable position because it expressed a viewpoint the governor and his allies did not like. Walt Disney World Parks and Resorts is one of the largest taxpayers and employers in the state, they wrote. Now, Andrew, we have not heard much about this recently. The media has gone silent. So explain to everybody out there and explain to me, how is it and why is it that Disney is about to take a huge L? Why are they about to lose majorly?
Say it ain't so. This just in. Disney lost money on another movie. Why, that can't be. I thought that John Lasseter fella over at Pixar was cranking out the latest hits, and Marvel was unstoppable, and Disney princesses were a thing, and Star Wars was a multi-billion-dollar money-making franchise.
I overheard you talking about Disney, and wanted to let you know you're really behind the ball. If you were getting great articles from thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel, you'd actually be ahead of the culture curve and have entertainment explained.
Well, let me be very clear. The entire presentation of that information was incredibly biased and incredibly framing that in a light most favorable to Disney. We've kind of debunked this on this channel before, on your channel as well as my channel. That's facts like, for example, Disney being the largest employer, largest taxpayer. These are erroneous. These are incorrect. Other employers, like, for example, Publix employs more employees within Florida than Disney, right? So there's a lot of incorrect information within there. And just like that, you see that they're trying to forget about the state case. This is something the mainstream media has been doing because they want to ignore that because, number one, they don't understand it. They cannot explain it. They don't have really
the ability. It's a properties right issue.
Right. They don't understand property law. They don't understand state law, so they can't explain it. And because they can't and won't explain it, they try to focus on the federal issue. And why do they do that? They do that because it's sexier to talk about DeSantis and Disney. It sounds better than talking about the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. It doesn't pop off the tongue in the same way. So that's why they're so desperate to keep their eye on the federal case. But the reality
Andrew, you're not saying that the mainstream media is clickbaiting, are you? Surely you would never accuse them of such.
Never, ever, ever would they do that. Just like never during a pandemic would they put, certain counts in blood red, every single day ticking across the screen. They would never do anything like that.
Never would they.
Ever. No way. And right now, what we have is we actually have in both the state and the federal case, we have motions to dismiss that have been filed. Now, Disney wants to try to dismiss and or stay, which means pause. Stay is another word for pause. Disney wants to pause the state case because they would prefer to proceed on federal grounds. They think those grounds are more favorable to them. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis and the CFTOD, they want to stay or dismiss the federal case because the state case is where the property law is properly brought. By the way, that's what I agree. It's my legal opinion, is that the proper case would be in state court because this is a state law issue. So they're trying to stay or dismiss the federal case. Now, Ron DeSantis, in this motion, is actually trying to remove himself as a party from the federal lawsuit. What he's doing is he is saying, I am not a proper party. Me signing a bill into law is not something that's actionable, that you can bring to court. And there's nothing that suing DeSantis for signing a bill effectively does. The proper party would be the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, because that is the successor to Reedy Creek. That's the entity you're trying to affect, the entity which you're trying to enjoin or change. So that's the proper district. Maybe you could sue the state of Florida as a whole, right, based on some of the legislation. But Ron DeSantis as a party is inappropriate. So he's trying to remove himself. And the thing is, why the mainstream media is panicking is because it appears that in both of these cases, we may have giant wins for the state of Florida, for the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, and for Ron DeSantis. And that is going to be very, very embarrassing for Disney.
Well, they just won't cover it. That's what I think. I think the mainstream will put this at the back of the newspapers, if anybody still reads those. They'll drop them to the very bottom of some niche subgenre category on their sites, and they'll do their best to never speak of it again.
And I think that's why we're doing so well. And frankly, thank you guys for getting me to 100K. It's because you're not hearing this proper information from anywhere else. You're only hearing it from us covering this, who've been in this, covering this for the past couple months. You're only hearing it as it actually is, not filtered through the lens of the mainstream media. They'll have to put some footnote because people are going to be interested in, okay, what's happening with this case? But when you see this federal case get dismissed or limited or counts being knocked out, you're going to see a large amount of spin and a large amount of minimization of it. So
now, Andrew,
that's just par for the course.
When you say that Disney is going to lose bigly on this, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the entire thing thrown out of court? How bad does this go for Disney?
So for Disney, the nightmare scenario, the worst possible scenario, which is a likely scenario, I don't want to give exact probabilities, but it's something that could very much probabilistically happen, is the federal case gets entirely dismissed. It gets entirely thrown out. There's multiple reasons. The reason cited, one of the main reasons, which I have said from the beginning on this, which is Disney does not truly have standing. They do not meet the elements for standing. Standing means the ability to bring a claim to court. This is exactly the reason that the citizens who actually sued the state of Florida for these legislative changes way back earlier this year, they were thrown out for lack of standing. Disney also can be thrown out for much similar grounds. So they're very likely to be tossed out, if not entirely, almost all of the counts. So perhaps 4 of the counts might get tossed out. You might have 1 remaining count there in federal court. But the worst thing, even further, is the state case. So Disney wants to dismiss that. If that's allowed to proceed, we're going to start getting discovery. And this is going to be a nightmare. We are talking about internal Disney files, sources, emails, text messages that show their knowledge, their duplicitousness, the fact that they were trying to pass things at the last minute in the 11th hour and trying to make it look a certain way for the media. That would be a nightmare if that information comes out, because you better believe it is going to be publicized and talked about by the DeSantis team and by Florida. It is not going to look good for Disney.
Andrew, based on what we've seen publicly, do you believe, therefore, that the discovery would also reveal a significant amount of sloppiness, that they did not do a very good job of covering their tracks on the back end?
I think what it'll reveal is that this was all done for PR purposes, for a certain angle to be presented without consideration of the actual law. I frankly don't think that Disney either cares, or they might even willfully kind of know the law, right, and be willfully ignoring it, right? So we know the law, but we're going to choose to ignore it because from a PR standpoint, if we make this about the First Amendment, we're going to get people on our side, right? We're going to galvanize people. And we even saw that this worked for a moment with even folks on the left and on the right. It actually kind of galvanized people for 1 second. But as soon as those guys tuned in, they found out the truth, they quickly got in line. The folks that were on the right that were crying about the First Amendment really have been silenced. I really haven't heard much of those guys, because those arguments have been debunked by yourself, by my channel, Valiant Renegade, and a lot of others that have been putting out the good word on Disney.
Well, and perhaps that's why channels such as Valiant Renegade are featured now all over the news, appearing more on primetime cable than some of the hosts over there. But yeah, so I agree with you fully. Let's continue on with the rest of this article and see how it performs. What do DeSantis and Disney disagree on? Disney wants back its longstanding rights to self-govern its Orlando-based Walt Disney World's park and resorts under its special tax district, formerly called the Reedy Creek Improvement District. On February 27th, DeSantis signed a bill banishing the company's ability to do just that and renaming the district the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. HB 9 ensures the Walt Disney Company is no longer given preferential treatment, his administration wrote in a news release that month. Allowing a corporation to control its own government is bad policy, especially when the corporation makes decisions that impact an entire region, DeSantis said in February. This legislation ends Disney's self-governing status, makes Disney live under the same laws as everybody else, and ensures that Disney pays its debts and fair share of taxes. Before DeSantis signed the bill, Disney's special district was exempt from Florida's building code and fire prevention code and state regulatory reviews and approvals, the release reads. In March last year, Disney's then CEO Bob Chapek publicly denounced DeSantis' Parental Rights and Education Act. Hey, there's the actual name of it.
There we go.
And folks, by the way, Bob Chapek did so at the behest of now CEO Bob Iger, who was still at the company as a consultant, who was also undermining Chapek with a cabal of individuals who did not like him at the helm, which opponents dubbed the, you get it, at a company shareholders meeting. The bill bans public school educators in Florida. We've already read that. Quit saying it. And then it says, we were opposed to the bill from the outset, Chapek said at the meeting, also announcing the company would donate $5 million to organizations that protect various rights. Now, Andrew, the funny thing about this one is it does not mention that Ton Newton, the architect of Reimagine Tomorrow, the chief diversity officer of Disney, the lady who was running an Etsy line, perhaps for prestige over there, but she was the architect behind all of this. She was in charge of these meetings where Chapek came out and had to do the hostage video. She's gone now. She's exited the company.
Yes.
Things are not going well for those who have been a part of this.
Yeah, it's ultimately been a failure. And frankly, look, Chapek's obviously gone. Ton Newton is gone. They're going to obviously bring in a new, diversity, equity, inclusion officer, right? That's something they're very committed to because their primary investor, BlackRock, came out and specifically said, hey, if you do not get on this train, we're pulling funding. So Disney, like a good boy, went out there and, was number one, number two in the entertainment industry in terms of DEI score. They're, top ranking in terms of that. And part of that is doing the virtue signaling. Part of that is doing that kind of charade of, okay, we're, kowtowing to this agenda. And because they feel like they need that funding, perhaps they're more beholden to that. Perhaps they felt like they had to bring this to court and fight back even if they lost, because this is their key source of revenue going forward is from these specific investors. So unfortunately, because they've decided to take that money to drink the Kool-Aid, to go full woke, they've committed themselves to these battles, but these are battles they're going to lose. We see that they're losing in the box office, like Valiant has said, almost $1 billion there. But now they may be right about ready to lose in the courtroom. Remember, we've got also $1 billion of bonds at stake here, which, you know, can be up in the air if they mess with things too much. But on top of that, and I think further than that, the long-term effect of the taxation, the change in fees, the change in the structure is going to be in the billions for Disney. Losing that total control over Reedy Creek, messing up by actually speaking up, and by, you know, kind of upsetting the apple cart when they could have just stayed silent on the issue. They could have just kept doing what they're doing. This is going to ultimately cost them billions, if not trillions of dollars over the decades, right? Because look, as much as we see Disney on the decline, I don't expect Disney to go anywhere, at least in the next 10 years. I expect the Disney World parks will still be in Florida. And because of that, they're going to have to deal with the regulations, the fees, and the other issues that are going to come down the pike now that they've lost sole control over the corporate kingdom.
So, Andrew, first of all, I want to say that, you know, people are out there hoping and wishing that they'll find some way that the Disney company is in deep, deep trouble. There's some conspiracy out there, etc. I'm here to tell people this is the one you want to pay attention to. We're covering it here. We're talking about a minimum of tens of billions of dollars, I think, over a century of Disney doing what they've done and now facing the consequences. And I also want to dispel a bit of the misunderstanding some people have. Some people think that, you know, Disney is being punished, but this is more akin, and you grade my analogy I'll do here, okay? Tell me where I'm wrong on this if I am. But it's sort of like if you were, let's say you had a home, and let's say that you were doing something you really were not supposed to be doing on that property. Let's say that you have to have a burn permit, for example. Yes. But you sit out there with your fire burning every single day in the front yard, in your you know, whatever, your fire pit, what have you, burning your garbage.
Your Elon Musk flamethrower, you know, your space.
That's right, your Elon Musk flamethrower. Yeah. And the cops just drive by. They know they should get out and mess with you. They know that you're supposed to be cited, but they like you. They're trying to be nice. They look the other way. And then you put out a sign that says, "I hate cops." And the next day, all of a sudden, you can't burn your trash in the front yard. That is what it feels like to me for Disney, right? They were getting away for decades with things that they were not supposed to get away with, and nobody really wanted to say anything. Just let them be. They bring in a lot of money, and then all of a sudden, they put up the "I hate DeSantis" sign, and away we went.
Right, and for the longest time, they supported people on both sides of the aisle. But, you know, as that changed, as they felt, you know, inclined to provoke Florida, and at the same time, the kind of perfect storm has been they provoke Florida at a time when they need to cut costs. When they needed to save money, they are now spending money in a fruitless legal battle that is going to get them nowhere, that they are never going to win against the state of Florida. And because of that, I think they've ultimately shot themselves in the foot. This is a time which we know they've got to scrounge up billions of dollars for the Comcast deal to buy Hulu. And because of that, and because they've got to get that money right now, I think this is the worst possible time to be engaged in this battle, which is why they are trying to bury their losses. Their stock price has already taken enough of a hit without realizing that, hey, they're the ones that are in the wrong legally, they're the ones that are messing up, they're the ones that are at fault. They've tried to bury the reasons why they canceled projects like Lake Nona. That's one thing that they buried very, very deep. It's not because, for example, that, oh, Florida was a business climate. No. They had to. Florida was a bad business climate. Florida's a great business climate, fantastic business climate. Thousands of people have moved to Florida, particularly during the pandemic, because it is a wonderful business climate. The issue is, in fact, that Disney needs to cut costs, they need to save money, and also that Bob Iger was never really a fan of the Florida campus, of the Lake Nona campus. That was really a Chapek thing, and with Chapek out the door, that was kind of doomed from the get-go.
But you know, folks, let this be a lesson to all of us. Just like if you are in the Northeast right now and you're dealing with all the smoke and the haze from the Canadian wildfires, you can't identify as someone who has clean air. I mean, you can try, but you're still going to cough and wheeze. And the Walt Disney Company, they can't identify as a company that's going to win. They can try and they can spin it, but it's divorced from reality. And that's where we are, is that eventually you collide with reality. All right, in all fairness, let's read the very end of this article so we get both sides. We'll get our final thoughts from Andrew and then we'll wrap this one up. Here we go. Why did Disney sue DeSantis? In a lawsuit filed April 26th, Disney claimed DeSantis retaliated against the company when he passed a law banishing Disney's long-standing ability to self-govern Walt Disney World because of what its CEO said about that bill. The lawsuit reads, for more than half a century, Disney has made an immeasurable impact on Florida and its economy, establishing Central Florida as a top global tourist destination and attracting tens of millions of visitors to the state each year. This government action was patently retaliatory, patently anti-business, and patently, can't say it enough, unconstitutional. Disney's attorneys go on to criticize DeSantis for other proposed and recent threats to the site, to look at things like taxes on hotels, tolls on the roads, developing some of the property that the district owns with more amusement parks, and even putting a state prison next to Disney World. That's Reedy Creek Improvement District State Penitentiary. But folks, don't worry, it's not actually going to happen. It was a joke. The company wrote that it exhausted other options to come to a resolution and needed legal action to protect its cast members, guests, and local development partners from a relentless campaign to weaponize government power against Disney in retaliation for expressing a political viewpoint unpopular with certain state officials. It is asking the court to declare that Senate Bill 4C and House Bill 9B are unlawful and unenforceable because they are enacted in retaliation for Disney political speech in violation of the First Amendment, among other requests. And thus, we come to the end of this article as far as we'll go. Andrew, what do you think about all of that? Is it correctly framed or no?
This is absolutely the same tired, incorrect argument that we have seen from Disney and from Disney media, Disney show media from the beginning. Once again, for those that are just tuning in that may not have heard this before, but the First Amendment argument is simply just a ruse, because at the end of the day, Disney was not affected at all by any of DeSantis' actions. Let me repeat that. Disney has not been affected at all. Reedy Creek was affected. Well, you say, oh, well, isn't Reedy Creek, part of Disney? No. In fact, they are not a subsidiary. They are required to be separate. They have to be a separate, independent public entity, just like your city would be independent, just like the city of Orlando is not the same thing as, Lockheed or any other major company. These are separate public governmental entities, and they're supposed to operate completely separate from Disney. In fact, Disney in their bonds guaranteed that, right? In the bonds that were issued by Reedy Creek, Disney officials guaranteed that they were separate, that they indeed do operate separately. They have separate buildings, right, in order for Reedy Creek to operate public business. Because of this, and because these are separate entities, the First Amendment argument completely fails from the get-go, which is why they tried to come up with these other arguments, which, by the way, are the bulk of the federal claims. The Contracts Clause, Takings Clause, Due Process Clause, these all relate to these illegal and impermissible contracts that they passed at the last minute, not the First Amendment. The First Amendment argument is actually the last and weakest of Disney's arguments. But as always, people go for the flash and not the facts, which is why I am glad to come on your channel anytime, WW Pro, and talk about the facts of this analysis.
Absolutely. Disney has been caught in a situation where they were pretending to be one and the same with the government, which was granted to oversee all of this. They had manipulated the facts on the ground, manipulated the people who lived inside the district such that they controlled it all. And when you do so, well, that works out until the authorities begin to take a look at those books, and that may be what we have with Discovery. Disney did not suffer, as you said. It was the Reedy Creek Improvement District that is no more. They are supposed to be wholly separate entities, and yet Disney had manipulated the situation such that they were one and the same, but not under the correct way of governing, not under any sort of official line. And so they're going to have an interesting time going forward, and it is all coming down on Disney on so many different domains right now. We're covering it all. The Pro Show live Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss it today if you're watching this video at the time that it comes out. And folks, where can we find Legal Mindset out on the great big beautiful web? Let's find out right now.
LegalMindset.locals.com is my private community, and Legal Mindset on YouTube. You can check that out as well. Also have 3 other channels which you can check out. Illegal Mindset, which is for a kind of off-topic general conversation. Go East Gentlemen, which is my channel about going over to Asia. And a new podcast, which I'm hosting in person here in Thailand, Bangkok Bros. You can check out any of those streams to find me on any platform talking about a whole host of different issues.
All right, and make sure you subscribe to them all, folks. We want to support all of our wonderful guests, our experts who are willing to come on. The conversation here has come to an end, yet the commentary just begins. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. Tell us down below. Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Are we morons? Or do we know exactly what we're talking about? And have we for a long time? Let us know down below. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.